And we are live. So welcome everybody to this webinar on authentic organizations. My name is Josh Levent, and we are here with Monia, Monia Ben Larbi, and she's an educational consultant, and or you could say a leader in the field of education. She, I guess, has passions in education and health and in organizations, and when those three things come together, she gets excited. And so let me just say a few more words of introduction. Monia worked for many years as a facilitator, as a mediator, and as a trainer, and more recently as a freelance educational consultant. And now recently she joined the initiative for Schule im Aufbruch. How would you translate that to English?
We translated with Schools on the Move.
Schools on the Move. Cool, which is an initiative that supports schools in moving to, I guess, more innovative organizational models that help unlock the potential of students and teachers, I guess, more and more.
And the organization.
Yeah, and the organization as a whole. Cool. So we met on the Reinventing Organizations Forum, which is a book that I guess both of us have read. I guess maybe most of the people who are watching haven't read it. And it's just a book on how we can make organizations better. What did you, when you read the book, how did it affect your life?
This is turning into a religious talk. Actually, I hate, I only read novels. I absolutely hate it when people tell me to read textbooks, and I always think if somebody has something important to say, can't they write a novel? And so Stefan gave me the book and said, you have to read this. This is exactly the way we want to work. And I got in a real bad mood because when the book arrived, there was not one single picture in it. And I had to read book. And I actually read it. I think it's the first like theory book that I read really every word of it and not only skipped through it. Because I had the feeling all the time that it's really giving what I always felt was true, a language and a structure. And I really, really like it when like structure and intuition come together. And I guess that's what happened when I read this book. And so I called up some members of my team, like right the next day, and we had a meeting about something else. And I said, no, first half hour, I need to talk. I need to tell you about something else. And they didn't understand a word of what I said, I think, but they totally went for my enthusiasm and said, okay, if you're so enthusiastic, we'll do that. And so we started right away, really the next day, in like a team of 3-4 people to experiment with it.
Wow. That's great. And I guess maybe just to sort of explain to people a little bit, one of the things that the book starts with, or actually I don't know if it starts with this, I don't remember. I have it right here with me on my Kindle. But one of the things that it talks about being kind of really important is the assumptions that we have about people, actually. You know, like, how much do we trust people? And I guess this is kind of maybe one of those things where you thought this is something that you already knew for yourself, that you trusted people, but organizations kind of didn't behave like that most of the time.
I think in our team, everything is represented. Yeah. We have some people who really, really love like structures and rules, and when things are very reliable and very clear and very ordered. And then we have people who absolutely believe in like processes and project management tools and strategy formulation. And but I think a majority at the time was more like consensus and harmony seeking. And we had reached a point where we actually didn't work so much anymore and talked a lot more. And the dissatisfaction was starting to grow because all of that harmony and talking and reaching consensus, and then looking at our impact that we had on the schools, which is our actual job, somehow felt out of proportion. We had a lot of impact, but a very big feeling that it could be a lot more if we found a way to not to go back like to something that's totally ordered and and full of hierarchy. So the question was, how can we get out of this like slow moving consensus oriented organization without going back to like one boss who's saying what you do, and then you just put it through the right processes and everything will be all right. And so what we had done at the time was saying, let's just work without a plan for some time and see what happens. See at what point we actually will need something. When will we actually need a meeting instead of having one every week? And when will we actually need a strategy, because we're starting to go in different directions instead of constantly writing one strategy paper after the other. So that was really the point. We were extremely open at the moment when I read the book. So I guess it was a lot easier for us because we had already said we're not satisfied with what's happening here. We don't know how we're going to change it, but we are.
Yeah.
So
I find that a super interesting balance. And I guess Frederic in the book sort of calls the consensus seeking as being part of the culture paradigm, which is that, you know, everyone is correct, and there's no, you know, it's sort of the pluralist perspective that we should accept all perspectives, and the integral, you know, what I call the authentic organizations say actually it's not always about harmony. You know, we should let the tensions be there if there's tensions going to be there, and if we need to solve them, then we'll solve them. But it's not about trying to. In some ways, it's sort of stops trying to be so utopian as consensus-driven organizations.
Well, I think it's just about doing a lot more. I think one of the, I mean, in all this, like, we're trusting each other and all this is absolutely necessary as a basis, but what's really changed is that we get work done, and that's extremely satisfying. And I think that's a problem that a lot of social businesses have also, because we're all like world-changing good people. And there's a certain need for harmony that actually brings up conflicts.
Yes.
Because you're like working with the brakes on. And I think we have a lot less conflicts now because we have a lot more responsibility for addressing them. We can't rely on a group to somehow do that.
Yeah.
But now it's like really each of us has a job, and that's a job to stay as work able, as able to work as possible. And if not, somebody will come around and say, I think you have to take care of yourself. There's something wrong. And help you find out if you want to. But it's really about you now doing something so you can work again and enjoy work again. And yeah, but that's coming now from the end. That's, yeah, without really explaining what we're doing. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I guess because I think that's one of the things that I also found interesting is, and one of the reasons why I think I'm very passionate about this kind of way of running an organization is because I think it creates potential for personal growth. And, you know, it's one of the things I'm very passionate about. That's why I work with the Lifestyle Design Convention, which is a personal development conference. And I have never before considered an organization as a place where people might develop themselves. And now it seems like that must be the case. I mean, in your organization, I imagine when people have this more responsibility on themselves to surface issues, that's an opportunity for them to grow.
It's an opportunity for them to grow, but it's also a necessity for them to grow.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can actually stay in like every day the same modus. I'm not taking any thoughts about work home in an organization that's so lively. But maybe so people understand what I'm talking about, I can try to explain a little how we're working.
Yeah.
And then, and if you're also interested in the difficulties we are having in certain things, I can talk about that too, but only if you want to.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be interesting. We've also got a chat, so if people ask questions, feel free to jump in with a question. I'll see it and I'll pass it on. But yeah, tell us how you work day to day.
Give me questions. I always feel like there must be a starting point, but it's really not. It's not like building one on the other, but it's like a circle of decisions that we took that only work because they are interconnected. And I think the main decision that we took was that the person who is doing the job is the person deciding, and that nobody decides anything that they're not doing. And there's a can decide, but there's also a must decide. And sometimes it's not all that easy. And the only thing that you have to do, that I have to do before I take a decision concerning my field, is that I really have to sit down and think, if I take a decision now and if I change something, who in the team will be affected by it? And then I have to ask them, what do you think? So that's already a process. Just in the question, who do I actually have to consult? Because in the beginning, we all consulted everybody, and that was too much communication. So now we really have to sit down and think, who do we need to consult? And that is already a real challenge, because it means you really need to know what the others are doing and how you're affecting and how your work is affecting theirs. So there's a big consciousness of the network that we're working in, and how things affect each other. And you need to really be open for complexity. If you're hoping for something simplistic, it's not the right system. Because we are not responsible like for coaching the schools, like for big things, but we're also always responsible for the things that we're best at. So it can be very intertwined, and so there's maybe one field that before would be in one job description only, and now suddenly 4 of us are in there. But if we say something like, well, the 2 of us are responsible, that's always the moment where we know we have to sit down and now define who exactly is responsible for that. So there's no such thing as 2 people are responsible for one thing or 2 people decide. And then what happens is you ask people, and then they will give you answers, and they will very often go into totally different directions. And so for the consensus lovers, you have a problem here, because you have to decide. And that's not always the first impulse. The first impulse is often asking, oh, can we now meet and please find consensus? And we're like, nah. Now it's, you heard them all, you take a decision, and we all promised we'll support your decision no matter what, because I was heard, even if you decide the opposite. So I think that's like really in the middle of it, is do your job, decide what you're doing, but hear the others, really, really hear them.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing that's pretty difficult to fall into as a normality is really to let the organization grow. And in the beginning, that made a lot of wishes for strategy. Suddenly, a lot of people had strategy meeting without me. And I didn't really know how to react to that, because they somehow felt that the organization needed that. And I was always saying, look, we had 2 authors, for example, writing 2 totally different things for us, for our schools. And the last chapter in both things was the learning school. They never talk to each other. We can trust this organization. We're so connected to it. We will walk in the same direction. And when conflict arises, we'll talk. And so that's maybe even more difficult. It's not trusting the others, because, well, those are people and we know them, but it's really trusting the organization and our connection to the organization. And I think that's really new, that you trust an entity and try to see the organization as like a being. And for example, when we meet as a team once a month for 2 hours, and there's always a chair for the organization.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
With us in the circle. And when we start arguing about things, somebody usually says, let's ask the organization. And then we all look at the chair and we're all totally clear what we have to do. Or sometimes when we're totally confused, we sit on the chair and hope that it's somehow like coming, our connection is somehow coming back. So it's really also a playfulness with it. Yeah. And we are all working when we want, where we want. So sometimes we don't actually meet. So what we have is a very, very clear online world, and there are two things everybody has to write in there, and that's in the calendar, and that's our to-do list. And because of our to-do list, we can then actually ask the others and say, I'm seeing something that I don't understand, or I'd like to consult you on that, so we can actively seek information and don't constantly have to think, who do we need to inform? I would say that's the absolute ground basis of our way of working now.
Cool. So you're reducing, I mean, the amount of, a lot of organizations use 10 different tools to communicate and keep documents. And for you, you said we have 2 that you have to fill out and everything else is optional. Is that right?
Exactly. And we're working with BaseCamp. And it has both functions, and sometimes we use more, but sometimes not. But that's the 2 things that everybody has to do. So there are really 2 have-tos. The one have-to is that you fill out BaseCamp, and the other one is that you take your decisions and you ask the people who will be concerned beforehand. And all the rest, you basically do what you feel is the most supportive for the organization and for our schools, which is basically the connection that we're trying to keep. Because it's not about us, it's about our schools. Yeah,
of course. Maybe for people listening, because we spoke a little bit about the organization, and you work with various different schools, and I guess you have projects with the schools that vary for a different amount of time, and your organization has to be very adaptable also to meet the needs of your clients, which are schools.
Exactly. Our clients are schools who have decided to basically do an education for the 21st century and not for the 20th century anymore. And we have some schools that we work with who have done that for a long time, and some schools who are starting the change now and the transformation process. And we have small schools and big schools and state schools and private schools, and so it's a very diverse mix of schools, and we basically try to support them with what they need, which is a mixture of knowledge, and very often it's really just how to, like telling them how to do it with courses, and very often it's really just a hand in the back, because transformation is hard and tiring, and so it's really just knowing who to call and also bringing them together. And we feel that if we challenge our schools to really go into major transformation and have the courage to do new things, we have to do it too. So the transformation is also a part that we say, okay, we need to live and to feel what we're actually telling them to do, is to go into new fields, they have to trust the students, we have to trust each other, but we really want to experience what we're telling them to do. It's our way also of walking the talk. Our motivation, and from there we actually learned a lot, and we are a lot more empathetic now when they say oops. We're like, yeah. I know.
Because it's much easier to put yourself out as an expert and say we know all this, but we don't need to do it, we're past that, and really remove yourself, but to live in it, and it kind of makes you a better consultant, I guess. But it's also harder, and you can be, I guess it's great for your clients because you can be so much more empathetic to what they're going through.
Well, in the beginning we always had the feeling that we had to give them like this perfect product, and then at some point we actually said, you know what, you get us, and everything that we have we'll do for you. And the limitation of our office is the limitation of the people sitting here. And they love it. And then the beginning was like, oh God, we can't say that, how unprofessional. We need to have products and strategies and like marketing plans and I don't know, all that stuff. And so we're always like coming a little to new school, we're always a little with this still a little accusatory tone, going like, well, we're basically doing what we can from what you need. And then like, oh, finally someone who but that's also a lot of courage, and we're still not totally full of self-confidence for that. Yeah. We would still have this like magic ingredient that suddenly changes an organization, but I guess it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think for me that's exactly the definition of authenticity, is to say, this is us, this is what, you know, this is me, this is what I've got.
Yeah.
And that's it. And not to, yeah, I mean, to be confident, not to be confident, I think at that point, it's not that important. Like as long as you can be very clear about what you're offering, and people can then see, because I feel like this is, you know, it's such a hangover from previous ways of working and doing things in the world, is that we constantly feel like we have to market and sell ourselves and convince people, persuade them that we have something for them. And actually it's, you know, I guess you just said you're finding that when you go to people and just say, this is what we do and this is what we've got, then people are more excited by that than if you try to have a nice, crisp marketing text.
Yes, and if you ask me in 6 months, what do you do, then I'll probably say something totally different. So that's also something that we're a bit ashamed of, because we always feel that's so hard to communicate. But that's really what's happening, is we're learning every day what they need, and we're adapting to it every day, because each person can. I just have the full power after one conversation with you to do something different tomorrow. And I don't need to have a meeting or a reformulation of something, so we're really learning on the go. But I think something like that is only possible because we're a very, very diverse team. If we were all the same, it wouldn't work. It's really only working because we have very different work styles, we have very different expertises, very different backgrounds, and that makes us like, and we really know each other well and what we're good at. So it's working, but it's also, we know a lot more about each other than the work, and it's always like, okay, now, and every day I'm learning things like, really, you can actually, you've already worked in like corporate identity formulation, blah, so let's use it. Or one of my very dear colleagues, she's a coach, and she said, no, I really don't want to coach here. I have my coaching business, and what I want to do here is like paperwork and organize. And we said, okay, that's what you want to do. And it's not possible in an organization like that. Of course, now she's coaching the schools. Because it's like all of you is going in there more and more, because you see, oh, something is needed and the others don't have it. Yes. So we either have a need that's not filled, or I'll do it. And this working with so much freedom is actually pretty advanced. You have to be very clear with yourself and what do I want, and you have to have colleagues who tell you, are you still sure you want to do that? Always asking, but never telling you. So you ask if self-development is possible, and I would say it's totally necessary. You cannot work like that without learning daily and developing all the time, and having to take really a lot of responsibility also for your breaks, for timeouts, and because when everything is possible, you want to change the world, and you get an organization where you can do what you want.
It's 120 hours a week.
Exactly. And I can work wherever I want. Yes, okay, I'll sit on the lake and change the world. Okay, do that.
Yeah, I used to work for a nonprofit in New Zealand, and we also, I mean, we ended up, we had to tell people to stop working because everyone was working too much, you know, and it really creates burnout and stress and things like that. And at the time, I had no idea about this new way of doing things. Otherwise, it would have been very different. But still, I know that you know, if people are passionate about the work, they'll burn out.
But we don't allow overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have part-time jobs because we all love to do other things. So, and I think when you work part-time, you're not allowed to do more time, because then you should have a full job and be paid for a full job too. So if there's like a week or two where you have to do a lot because a lot of schools are here now and we can't, so there's a lot to do, then like the week after that you really sit at the lake or you work in your other jobs. So we all have like either other jobs or big hobbies, or just need a lot of time on holiday with our children, where we sometimes actually close the organization because we work with schools and we have children in school, so why the heck should we work on holiday?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So I think that's also very important to actually also see yourself, but also to learn the difference between real work time and felt work time. Because sometimes you like work 40 hours and it feels like 10, and sometimes you like work 5 hours and it feels like you've been working for 2 weeks. And to also see this like as a self-diagnostic and see what's happening here, and why is reality and my emotion here totally aside, and why isn't that working? So it's really a lot of self-reflection and always going back to myself. And also in conflict, the first step is try to see if I can't find a solution in me before I go and talk to the other one. And that's not easy. When it's so much easier to say it's your fault than maybe it's me. So it is really personally extremely challenging, but very, very rewarding. And I think I've never learned as much in my adult life as in the last 2 years.
Wow. That's a testimony. Right?
Yeah. And I think if you would ask the others, they would say the same thing.
Incredible. It sounds, from the way you're speaking, it sounds like it's such a highly conscious way to work. You know, in the sense that you are just, as you said, constantly aware and questioning what's going on, you know, questioning your basic assumptions about things like how much should you work and when should you work and when should you take holidays. And these are things that, you know, the most benevolent traditional organizations don't question, because it's so almost very radical to question that, you know, to question like, you have this many weeks holiday, that's standard in this country, and you work 40 hours a week, that's standard. What, you know, but to do something different, to even question that, I think it's wonderful. I don't see us in you know, in 100 years time, will humanity still be working 40 hours a week?
I hope not in winter. In summer, I think it's not a problem. But you should be at home while there's still light sometimes. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. It's not that each of us is all the time totally aware of everything. We're really hoping that 1 or 2 of us are aware at each point in time. So that there is at least someone there to tell the others that maybe something is going on here.
Yeah.
But I really think that's my job. I had a lot of, or like the ongoing question for me is, what's my job now? Before I was the decision maker. That's what, I was the one people came and said, I have something that I don't want to solve. It's not like they couldn't solve it. No, it's more like you're getting paid more money than us, so you solve it. And I had all this stack of stuff on my desk that I hated doing, but that I somehow felt I had to do.
Yeah.
And when 2 people wanted different things, and I had to decide what they were doing. And I had a very reactive leadership style, where I basically did what they told me to do.
Servant leadership, as they call it.
Yes. And if nobody wanted to do something, well, then I guess it was my job. And I really didn't know what's my job now. And I'm still not really finding it. It's a very, it's a balance I can't quite describe yet, between letting things happen, even if I don't like them, and being extremely demanding that on the work system. So, and the last one I still have to learn, and that it's not really something people do what they want to do, but not in the way they want to do it. There is a very clear decision making and information process, and if that structure is not really given, the whole thing isn't working. So I'm learning that it's really my job to be very tough on that, and to really say no. We're not having the 5th meeting this week about something. We don't need consensus. It's your job to decide that. You've heard everybody 5 times. Decide. I'll be there. If it's a wrong decision, I'll be behind you and say, yes, I'm totally with you, but it's time to decide now. So, and that's really something I'm learning. And on this course, usually when I ask my question, there's always an answer that's going like trust. And then I feel like, okay, I'm going to trust. And it's not always a solution, because trusting is not, and actually telling that the structure is the structure can go hand in hand. It's not like just because you trust you can't do anything anymore. And that's like the thing that I'm still experimenting with. And I think I let it go for a little too long, and now I came in very, very strongly, maybe a little too strongly, because I had the feeling that because if you don't do anything, the whole system comes back. Then suddenly the board thinks they are the boss because there's no boss and somebody has to be the boss. Or team members start to come together and create huge strategies that cost like 2.3 million. And so I guess that's my job. My job is really, in German I say Hüten. I'm like the shepherd of our organizational model.
Yeah.
And I will make sure that we are staying in there, and that's really my job. But how to do that exactly every day, I learn. I'm learning every day, and maybe if you ask me in 5 years, I can tell you how leadership works in that model.
That's really interesting. I'm really resonating with that, because it's something that my coach trainers tell me about coaching. They sort of say, well, coaching is about holding a process, and you have to be very strict about that process. Otherwise, people will run all over the place and you won't be able to serve them. Not everyone. Some people can hold the process for themselves, but your unique role as a coach is to hold the process and do nothing else, just hold the process. And that's hard for me. I'm still learning how to do that. But it sounds like what you're saying, that's pretty much the role of a leader in this kind of organization too. Your role is to really hold the process and to trust the process and to
absolutely
be a champion for the process.
And that has like legal consequences. I mean, I am in Germany. It's a GmbH, so it means I am legally responsible for absolutely everything that's happening there. And I'm legally responsible for things that I'm not deciding and that I don't have the right to decide, actually, in our organizational model. I can tell them what I'd like them to do, but I can't tell them what to do. So I can only do that. I mean, I can totally trust the system if the system is really done well. And then I'm totally okay with having the legal responsibility. But when it starts like everybody's working how they want to and taking decisions how they want to, then I'm really getting nervous also legally. And so I guess this legal responsibility isn't all that bad, because it's kind of keeping me alert that I don't know how it is in other laws, but in German law, if something is going wrong and I knew that it would probably go wrong, I'm personally liable. It's not only the organization. And so that's like keeping me awake. Going like, okay, I really trust the system, but that means that the system really has to be the process really has to be clear and reliable for me and for them. Yeah. So it's helping me that I was a facilitator, because I can think in processes. And I think that's why I also went into that role, like kind of organically. There was never really a decision, Monia, you'll do that. It kind of happened. And then after it had happened, the board decided, okay, it happened, so we can just as well decide officially. But so even that like grew, because I'm a process person, and I really got it. I read the book and I really got it. Yeah. Somehow. Yeah.
It makes sense to me that as a facilitator, it's because that's what it is, isn't it? It's all structures and processes, and this is something that, yeah, as a facilitator, you that's your job to uphold those things. I think.
Yeah. And I like it because, like I said, like we have some people who really like the rules and the structure, and they are the best because they're really following the structure. Totally reliable, that's the way we are working. And then you have the people who need project plans and who are saying like, well, we need them, and then I say, well, then make them. Nobody's telling you not to have a project plan. I don't need it, but if you need it, do it. And if you need me to help you, I'll help you. But don't tell the whole team that that's the way they have to work. And the people who need a lot of exchange and they're going like, wow, but I need so much exchange, well, then do it. Invite the people, and if they want to come. So there's also like a little bit of fear, or we're a little in a phase now where it's like we're not allowed to meet anymore, we're not allowed to do strategy anymore, we're not allowed to, that's bull. You can do all that, you just can't ask everybody else to do the same thing that you're doing. So there are, we're like every day we are seeing there are new dimensions of freedom. And also that each step in freedom comes with a responsibility. And that's not, and on some days that's tough. Some days I would wake up and I'd actually like to go somewhere where I have no responsibility. Those are the days that I do online courses and just do click and links and spend time on the web and tell everyone I'm not here today. So that should be possible too.
Yeah, that's great. We had a question from Kai. He's the founder of the Lifestyle Design Convention. He's listening in actually, so that's really cool. And he had a question about the online tools, and I guess we mentioned BaseCamp. Which is what is that? What is the company called that makes BaseCamp?
I can open another window and check it out.
It's
you can see that that's not my role, deciding on those things.
So that's 37 signals, I guess, and the BaseCamp is this collaboration software. Do you use something else as well for because you're distributed? Do you meet online or do you meet in person?
No, we meet in person once a month, all of us, for 2 hours. And everybody has 5 minutes to present a visualized presentation about what they are concerned with at the moment. And 5 minutes for the others to ask. And in the end of the meeting, we talk about our roles. If everything is clear, everybody still knows what he's responsible for. If somebody is doing things that we never decided that maybe he should do or whatever. And the rest of the time, we have meetings with the people that we need, sometimes live, sometimes on the phone. Some of us are connected like everywhere, on Facebook, on WhatsApp, online, in like 5,000 places, and they are always with us, but not everybody likes that. So not everybody is in all those groups. I am trying to be in every group, but if I wouldn't like to, we all would live with it. And I think that's really important too, that you are allowed to communicate less. And you don't have like this rule of over communication, but then you also have to live with the fact that sometimes you don't know things, and that sometimes you feel a little alone when the others have insider jokes. That's the price you pay. But what we really all work on is BaseCamp, and what we do there is we have a calendar where we write like the most important things, especially also with like cooperation partners, so that we know, there's somebody else there I've never heard of. Who is that? Maybe he's interesting for me too. And we each have like a section where it says Monia's to-do list. And so I write my to-do list there, and sometimes they move my to-dos that are important to them to the top of my list. So that I will move theirs too, and then they move it back. So there's also like a kind of like non-verbal negotiation finding place. Taking place there. And we have files that there's like some whiteboards where you can write together, but we don't use it so much, and we upload our files there too. for the upload of the files, we have a lot in the Dropbox too, because BaseCamp doesn't allow you to do that, to tag it or to put it in like folders. So it's just one after the other, and after a few years, you don't find anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we do, which is from the same company, we have High-Rise, which means that all the emails that we are sending outside of the team are going to High-Rise. And so later, for example, when a school calls, and I can just put the name of the school and I see all the emails anybody in the team has ever written to them, so that I'm always on top of that. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we don't understand something on BaseCamp, we'll write something like, who is that? Or our designer will put a picture up and say, do you like it? And we'll get feedback there. So that's really the one place we're all working most of the time. Some people I have to drag still more again and again and again.
Yeah.
Which is, for me, is always a weird thing. I mean, I would say it costs like 15 minutes a week to actually have this clear for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And they'd rather have meetings where like everybody is there for like 1 or 2 hours, which means that if the whole team is present, it's like 20 work hours that are gone for everybody else instead of like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. I don't really get it. But then again, I like being online, and not everybody does. So it's not really fair if you come to like the same work styles.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I found it also for myself that I found it easier to figure out what my to-dos are when I'm talking to someone. If I'm sitting on a list, I'm just like, my brain turns to mush. But as soon as I have a conversation with someone, I can figure out everything in 5 minutes.
We have that too. I have someone, I'm sitting at home in front of the list, which I see from everyone, and I have a talk, and she's going like, I'm totally confused. There's so much on my desk, and I don't know what to do. And so we're talking, and I'm moving her to-do list all the time. And when we finish our call, she has a totally new structure to do it. Yeah. So you can always do that. That's all. I think that's really important to understand, that if you're not able to work, if you're confused, there's someone else that you can ask and say, help me. And you choose the person you want.
I'm sorry about that. My internet connection crashed, and I guess it kicked you out as well. Yeah, that's really. And it seems like there's still 3 people online. So thanks for sticking around.
Yeah.
We just went offline for 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it restarted the video, if it just continued without us. Oh, that was scary. Okay. Yeah, what we were talking about before.
I have no idea about the problems that happen when technology takes over.
Yeah, it's such a shame.
I think we were talking about how important it is to actively ask for help.
Yeah.
And not hope that it's coming, or that other people will solve your problems,
Yeah. I really struggle with that, actually. And I have, with a friend of mine, Sina, I agreed that we would have an Ask for Help challenge. And I have now a Post-it note stuck next to my door in my room at home, which reminds me to ask for help, because naturally I don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, the challenge is not to give it right away when I see that it's needed. Mm-hmm. And I still have absolutely no idea when is the right moment to actually interfere. I know that my instinct is too early, that I don't give other people the time to find out. Mm-hmm. And actually put on some pressure, or tell me what's wrong with you, or what do you need, and when they can't even answer the question at all, and they haven't even thought about it yet. But I don't think that not saying anything is my job either, so I'm really not sure on that. But I mean, I learn, we'll all learn together, and you can always ask them and say, maybe, was it too late? Or
yeah. And I guess it depends on the person. I guess some people, or does it? I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I know that some people really use me, and I like being used for that, where like I really get calls and it's saying like, I need you to listen just a moment, or could you help me sort something in my head, or I really don't know how to handle this situation. But those are usually the people who won't only use me, but like everyone else too.
Yeah.
And then there's some people whose personality is just to more like retreat and wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure when to tell them come back, because I don't know when they would actually leave. I think there's, if you come too late, they will lose their connection to the organization. And I'm not sure where that moment is. So sometimes I actually do stalk people.
Yeah. And I guess that's something also that we kind of touched upon before, like we kind of need to let go of the desire for it to be perfect a little bit.
Oh, it's absolutely impossible for it to be perfect. Yes. Yeah. A few days ago, one of the team members told me, oh, I think it's not perfect because I've never done anything like that before. And then I actually looked at like my work that I did on that day and what the others are doing, and I found out none of us have ever done any of what we're doing right now, because we're inventing it as we're going along. And probably half of it isn't too good. No, I think actually I'm always astonished how high the quality of our work is, if you think how organic it's growing, and how we're really not experts because we're doing things that they are not experts. Because when we know somebody else, the schools are getting this from someone else, then why would we do it? So we're always trying to like do what they don't get somewhere else. So it's very often things that nobody's ever done, or that we get inspirational, we learn with them. So I guess hoping that those things are perfect on the first time. But it's also understanding that a decision that I take today is only worse until someone else wants to open it up again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where was I reading about that? I don't think it was in, maybe it was in Reinventing Organizations, or maybe it was somewhere else. Someone was talking about how in traditional organizations, decisions are made with so much emphasis and strength, because the idea is once a decision is made, it can never be reopened. And in these kind of authentic organizations, decisions can be reopened because we trust that people won't do it for ego-based reasons. Is that a way to describe it, or what?
I'm not sure if it has anything to do with ego. I think it has a lot more to do with trying to answer the question, how can we support our schools in their transformation process every day with our knowledge of today?
Yes.
And that's a different one in 3 weeks. And on the same time, we need some clarity about things that we will do at least midterm, because otherwise you can't do something totally different every day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that's really something you don't have to do anything. It happens by itself, because as long as you believe in your product, you will stay with it and you will stick with it. Yes. And when you notice it's not working anymore, you'll try to adapt it. So I think it's not even something you have to decide not to decide. Yeah. So
because I think that's
kind of happening.
Yeah, and it naturally gets sort of account. If you make promises to other people, those promises get factored in, and that's enough. You don't need to say this is forever.
Yes. And you can't hide in this kind of organization, not with your colleagues, but also not to the outside world. It's always you as a person who gave a promise, and not you as an organization. Mm-hmm. Where you can tell later, but it's not my fault, because hey, it's totally in your responsibility and your possibility to do whatever you need. So we have very, very high level of, I don't know the English word, of like really doing what we say.
Yeah, integrity, I guess I would call that.
Mm-hmm. And reliance.
Yeah. What you just said also sparked this idea. You said you can't hide. What role does transparency play when we look at some organizations like Buffer, who are sharing everything about what they do internally? Is that important to you at all, to be transparent, or to what extent? Just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I think transparent, every employee, every person that's working with us, even if it's longer freelance, can see everything. And our experiences of the big finances, for example, in the beginning, everybody wanted to see all the finances, and then like 80% of the people never looked at it again because they realize it's way too much for them and they don't even want to think about it. So actually, the more transparent the things are, the least noticed. So maybe we should do some more secrecy around them. We had a lot of discussions about how transparent do we want to be also on our website with like all our numbers and finances to the outside world. And that discussion isn't really over yet, because we know of other organizations who actually had lost a lot of time with people starting to discuss the salary of their head of whatever, and suddenly people started discussing their organization instead of what the organization was doing, and they lost a lot of wind in the sails. And so we're basically always saying, when somebody's asking you, we're telling them everything, but for now we haven't put it on our website, or but it's more, but if you want to know something, I'll tell you. So there's very clear that we will not have any active secrets, but we're not really like actively spreading all our information in the world. What we're spreading is not about us, it's about our schools, because it's not about us. And that would be one more thing to say, it's about us, and it's not.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds like a really, I don't know, a really evolved way to do it, to say, we're not hiding it, but we're not going to go and publish it because it's not our work to publish these.
Yeah, it's not about us. Yeah, it's like if I do a seminar and you usually ask, like in the last round, you ask the people, so how was the seminar and did you like it? And the people talk about me, I'm totally irritated because then I did something wrong. It's not about me. They should tell me what they learned that day. And I think it's kind of the same logic. To say it's not about us, it's about our schools, and that's what we show, and the rest we'll tell you if you ask us.
That's super interesting that you say that, because it's sort of like, we always want to, isn't it true that we want to connect with people? And so even when we learn some knowledge or, you know, some understandings, you know, we become better somehow. We want to thank a person for that, for
yeah, if we're lucky, we're thanked. They're also learning experience people don't thank you for.
Oh, no.
I kind of feel like I drew a picture that's too like pink and flurry and glittery and like everything is perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. Not our relations, not our work style, not our. But I think what we're really doing right is that we're, as soon as somebody notices, and sometimes it takes a month until somebody notices that something is wrong, but as soon as somebody notices, we'll take care of it. So that's really the trust I have, that if people get big enough, we'll somehow take care of them. And once we do, we're really quick, and that's something I'm really proud of. It's like when we have a problem clear, it's usually solved like after a week, because things don't have the time to become like a system problem that we all live with because it's always been there and blah. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the freeing thing about authentic organizations, is that you're no longer inside this system that sort of has no particular purpose except to sustain itself, which is what I think most traditional organizations are about.
But that's what the system will do, and it's a pretty tough act not to follow it, because the system will always try to come back. I would say for the first 2-3 years, it will constantly try to come back because it just goes back into the form. That's the way systems work. And for our schools who've been doing that like for 150 years, it's a lot harder even, because try to change a school. I mean, it's really, we all have so clear assumptions about what a school looks like, and just going like, well, there's a classroom with no teacher where the ring isn't coming every 45 minutes. People are like, but then it's not a school anymore. We're like, yes, it is. But so I think like working with the systems and knowing actively that the systems have no other job than to sustain themselves, and it's not people who are doing that. There's really like this more than people who's always going back. You have to basically retake the same decision every day to do it differently. I think for at least 2-3 years until that's like the system, and then it will sustain itself.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think that's so true. If you can make the decision to, one book that changed my life when I was a lot younger, I think 10 years ago, something like that. I read The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and it changed my life because it said, happiness is a choice. Every day you can wake up and choose to be happy, and that was kind of revolutionary for me. And it seems like that every time. Like I like actually a quote from, I don't know if you know Jamie Smart. He has a quote that says your thoughts, you're only ever one thought away from clarity.
Yes. Yeah.
And your brain is not it's like kind of it doesn't hold a particular thought or emotion over time. It constantly recreates it, right?
Yeah, and you can do that actively. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're over time, and I want to be respectful of your time, even though we could probably speak for another couple of hours about this amazing topic. So maybe just one last question. If if people are thinking, how do I turn my organization a little bit more into something a little bit more like this? What's the first step they should take?
It depends on where that person is in the organization, I would say. Yeah. Like if you're the CEO or a board member, I think you can actually start with taking the decision. If you don't have that power in the system that you're in now, I think it would be very frustrating to try to push that decision against someone. But it's the same thing we're telling the schools always, is see where is the area where you can take decisions already, and you can start there. And you can, for example, start being more courageous about telling people how you are and what you need and what other possibilities you see. And so take more responsibility for what you're doing already now and for the relationships you're having with other people, and decide to trust actively and not only respond to trusts when you get it. So I think you can start working on, like Fred calls it, personal mastery already. And trust is really like a component when you give it to people, and regularly and again every day, and after a while it just spreads. So it's like so I think you can be like a trust agent already, no matter where you are. And I think it's very important to always talk about ourselves when we're enthusiastic about new things, and not tell people what they have to do. Mm-hmm. So go around and say, I read something and I'd like to tell you, without saying, and I think you should do that and you should change that now. But just like try to keep your enthusiasm and share it with people. And then in some organizations it will happen, and in some organizations I wouldn't work anymore. If there is no way that me, Monia, if I have to be ashamed of the way I am, I won't work there anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess sometimes you just have to also take a decision for yourself, because there are more and more organizations where you can actually come as a whole person. And so maybe you can also look for an organization like that. I'm still dreaming about, like, when you see like job ads, that it says something like, this is an organization like that and this is one like that, and not only what the job is. Because I don't care as much as what I do about, and way more about how I do it.
Yeah. That's great. And there's an online job search kind of site called, I think it's called The Muse, which is specifically focused on jobs with organizations that do something different.
Okay, so go there if you don't like yours. No, but I really believe that with trusting actively other people and yourself, and that you can actually say the things that you want to say, that you can change a lot, and that's a very good point of start.
Awesome. This is really cool. So this entire video will be on YouTube, and through the webinar jam, it'll also be replayable. So anyone else to see it again, that's up there.
Now I'm starting to panic. Did I say something that I don't want the whole word to know?
You can also let me know and I can edit it if you want.
No, hey, we talked about transparency.
So it'll be out there forever. This is the internet. And I just want to say that we're having another conversation about authentic organizations next Wednesday, same time, 8 p.m. Central European time. And one of the things I love about reinventing organizations, Frederic talks about how many different industries this is possible. And because someone like me who's worked entirely in service-based companies, it might be easy to assume that this doesn't work in something industrial, something manufacturing. And so I'm excited to next week be talking to Julian from Matt Black Systems, which is an aeronautics manufacturer. And they run their company on these kind of principles as well. So if you're interested in that,
I'll be there. Bye-bye.